Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Interreg Europe Match-Up Mobility Cafe. My name is Rose Power, and I am the EU Project Officer with the Southern Regional Assembly, with responsibility for the Match-Up project. The Southern Regional Assembly is delighted to host this event in conjunction with An Taisce Green Schools and Waterford Institute of Technology. The Youth Voice, joining the conversation on sustainable transport in Waterford, offers a platform for the young people of Waterford to share their voice on sustainable transport. So I'd like to present some information to you on the Match-Up project. And the Match-Up project is an Interreg Europe project that's seeking to improve the connection and the interchange between low carbon modes of transport. So that's walking, cycling, rail, bus, green vehicle, a regional action plan that will improve the transport policies in the southern region with the ultimate aim that we reduce CO2 emissions. An example of this would be one of the actions in our regional action plan is to create a tool for local authorities to help them or to implement a 10-minute town concept. So what is a 10-minute town concept? Well, it's a town where all essential services can be reached within a 10-minute walk or cycle, or will link to public transport that will allow you to do that. And when we say essential services, we're talking about schools and colleges, but we're also talking about health and retail and leisure, so that you can fulfill all your essential needs within that 10-minute walk or cycle or bus ride. So the learnings from the Match-Up project allowed us to create an implementation tool which sets out a framework and a methodology to implement a 10-minute town concept. And this is one of the regional policy objectives of our regional spatial and economic strategy. And the hope is that this tool will assist local authorities to implement this 10-minute town concept for all key towns in Southern Ireland. It's primary schools who wanted to share with you what they have been doing under the Green Schools Travel Programme in order to travel to school more sustainably, and also some recommendations on further support that they may require.
You should walk because you get good exercise, it's saving CO2, and when you get to school your brain will be ready for more work.
I like parking and riding because it's fun to walk and look at leaves and stuff.
I like walking to school because it makes you healthy.
Peer pressure is literally everything.
This sounds really stupid, but I really do think the helmet is such a big part of it. If you see a lad on a bike, it's not really different. You just think of it as, yeah. But like if you see a girl on a bike in her uniform or something, it's different.
I feel like you just need one person to do it.
We thought about the barriers that we face using sustainable travel. We would like to see in the future safer, less congested bike lanes, adequate space for all road users, penalties for breaking the rules being enforced by both motorists and cyclists, paths that are well maintained and places where families who live a distance away can park and then park and stride to school.
At this point, I'm going to ask all our panel members to turn on their cameras, but if they could just remain muted. And I'm going to introduce them all. And maybe as you hear your name, if you could just maybe raise your hand just to alert everybody who you are. So the first I'm going to introduce is Dominic Walsh. So Dominic is a regional planning officer here in the Southern Regional Assembly, and he has responsibility for implementation of the Regional Spatial and Economic Strategy, or better known as the RESIS, and he has particular emphasis for the southeast area of the Southern region. We have Jane Hackett, who is joining us as National Manager with An Taisce Green Schools and the Green Schools Travel Programme. We have Deputy Mark O'Casey, who's a TD and spokesperson for Social Protection, Green Party, and he's a representative for Waterford City and County Council, and also a founding member of the Waterford Cycling Campaign. Joining us from the Department of Education today, we have Leona DeCores, who's the Assistant Principal Officer with the Curriculum and Assessment Policy Unit. And we have Shirley Carney, who is Assistant Principal Officer with the School Transport Unit. We have Fergus Galvin, who's joining us today, and he's Director of Services in the Roads, Waterford and Environment with Waterford City and County Council, and he has responsibility for the Waterford Metropolitan Area Transport Plan. We have Rachel Cahill, who is Head of Executive Office with Transport Infrastructure Ireland, and Rachel is also author of Travelling in a Woman's Shoes, July 2020. And we have Robert Parkinson, who's with the Strategic Planning Section with the National Transport Authority. And Robert also has responsibility for the implementation of the Waterford Metropolitan Area Transport Plan.
Green Schools run courses in schools. It's called the Getting Gear course, and it's a free course, and it's only a 2-hour course, so your mum can definitely do that.
How can we ensure safer cycling? It's really safer cycling for everybody. Obviously, being segregated from traffic is the most important thing.
Segregated cycling infrastructure, as Mark and Rachel have already said, is a very important part of the network. But I suppose we would see cycling as happening on every street, every residential road in cul-de-sac and all the, the small local streets. We don't necessarily need segregation everywhere, but we do need segregation where there's traffic and big traffic, and a lot of schools are sometimes located in places like that. So it's going to be a key part of WMATS for sure, absolutely.
Rural bus services. We have just commenced a review of our school transport scheme, and I suppose as part of that review we will be looking at issues such as how our scheme meets the objectives in terms of rural development, climate change, delivering a better value for our students, and providing a service that is sustainable in terms of reducing car journeys and supporting rural development.
We have a national strategy on education for sustainable development, or ESD as we call it, and significant work has been underway since 2014, since that strategy was published. So one of the things that we have done has been to integrate sustainable development into the curriculum at all levels and across all subject areas.
We've done a lot of work over the last couple of years in reducing speed limits outside schools. We've put in measures like variable time speed limits, where we reduce using digital panels, we reduce the speed limit outside schools from 50 or 80 or whatever kilometres per hour down to 30 kilometres per hour for the periods of time that the school is opening and closing.
What you want is independent mobility for kids. You want kids to feel safe to make those journeys on their own.
Green Schools have been working with schools around the country to try and improve infrastructure around schools for over a decade now. The school zones, Green Schools actually developed the template for the school zones, which are the pencil bollards and the lovely colourful dots, in partnership with the National Transport Authority.
But certainly outside of our schools, we need to be given those visual cues to drivers. This is an area where there are children. Slow down. So you do that through your road furniture, you do through kind of clear signalling and signage. Those things are very important. I actually hadn't seen the pencil bollards before, but those are very interesting because, of course, once you see something unusual and you pay attention, it's like almost that rubbernecking approach. You slow down to see what, because you haven't seen those bollards before. You'll slow down to look at them.
I suppose that the Southern Regional Assembly has two main roles that impact transport and transport policy. And one is the managing of EU projects to develop models of good practice with other EU regions and cities, such as the Match-Up project that we're featuring today, supporting sustainable transport modes. But secondly, as the regional tier of government responsible for regional planning policy, the region has adopted a new regional strategy called the RESIS for the Southern region. And this strategy sets the framework for sustainable transport and connectivity across the region. An example is the policy for the 10-minute city and town, which is part of our regional strategy, where the aim is to provide a range of community facilities and services that are accessible by walking and cycling within 10 minutes.
We really appreciate you joining us today and giving us your perspective on sustainable travel in Waterford.